All right, so hi, I am welcoming Robert Bryce today. He's got 5 or 6 books out. The one you've got to read is A Question of Power. I have the others on my to-read list, but A Question of Power is just amazing. It is up there with Daniel Yerovin's, yeah, that's it. If I can remember, if I'm pronouncing him right, who wrote that initial book on the history of the oil um, industry. And I mean, both of them are just can't put down, but Roberts is great. And he's also got a Substack, Robert Bryce Substack. So, anyways, hi, welcome. And yeah, let's jump into it. So, tell me about the Osage tribe's recent win.
Sure. Well, David, good to be with you. Always happy to talk with other Substack writers. I love Substack. I've been a journalist my whole career, never had a real job. Being on Substack has just been fantastic. The Osage tribe's win in federal court on December 18th is a landmark decision. It is a landmark decision in the history of the wind business in America. I'm a longtime critic of the wind industry, proudly so. They don't like me, I don't like them back. But the decision by the federal court judge ordering the Enel, the Italian company, to remove 84 wind turbines in Osage County by December 1st of 2025 is unprecedented. It will cost the company around $300 million. The judge also granted damages and attorney's fees amounting to about $36 million. It's a massive, massive win for the Osage tribe. It's personal to me. My great uncle Ernie Rapp was a member of the Osage tribe, born in Fairfax, Oklahoma in 1909. My cousin owns a part of an Osage headright. I'm a member of the Cherokee tribe. It's just a fantastic win for the tribe and a huge win for Native American sovereignty.
So let me ask you a question. If they had gone in and asked if they could put it there, do you think the tribe would have negotiated an agreement to have the turbines in there?
Likely, yes. Now in hindsight, now if after Enel had acted so aggressively and so what's the right egotistically toward the tribe, it immediately turned off members of the tribe and really gained them a lot of bad favor. So, after they initially acted badly, their initial bad acting, I don't know if the tribe would have agreed or not.
Yeah,
but the reality is that in 2014, well, in 2011 and in 2014, and more particularly in 2014, after the wind project had begun construction, the Bureau of Indian Affairs sent a letter to Enel telling them to stop and to go to the tribe and get a permit because the tribe owns the subsurface and the company was mining the rock. That rock belongs to the tribe. And instead of stopping work, as they should have done, Enel instead sped up the work, began working at night. And now a decade later, they're facing this massive penalty and a incredibly embarrassing episode because this is a company that has been relentless in their promotion of their ESG credentials.
Yeah, what I love about it is 100 years ago, what they did would have worked. And nowadays it doesn't anymore. And that is wonderful.
It is.
And even aside from this one decision, that is wonderful.
It is reminiscent. It is reminiscent of the Reign of Terror and what happened in the 1920s. But it also there's a historical precedent here, and it's really some remarkable history that Chief James Bigheart was the one who foresaw what the value of those minerals were, and in the Osage Allotment Act of 1906 secured those mineral rights for the tribe. He died shortly thereafter, but he was one of the most famous of the Osage tribal chiefs, and it's a long and storied tribe. I read Richard Rhodes' biography of John James Audubon, and the Osage are mentioned prominently in that book.
Well, good for them. All right, so next one, because you've written both sides of it, what do you see as nuclear's future for power in this country?
The U.S. is going to lag behind Canada, behind Western Europe in deploying new nuclear. And that's for a lot of reasons. One is that natural gas, now it's up. I forgot what the price is today. We're at close to $4, I think, per million BTU. But in Europe, it's 3 times that money, or maybe 4 times that money. So, as long as natural gas is cheap, it's going to be difficult to economically build nuclear power in the United States. I'm adamantly pro-nuclear. My attitude, my platform hasn't changed in 15 years, end to end, natural gas to nuclear. I want nuclear to work. We need to diversify our generation sources, but we have to be very sober about what it's going to take to build new nuclear capacity in the United States. And that's going to be better regulatory environment, a more willing capital, a reform of our fuel supply needs. We're getting a quarter of the the fuel we need for our nuclear fleet from the Russians. A lot of things have to happen
Yeah.
for the nuclear comeback in the U.S.
All right. So let's shoot over to Europe, for Germany especially, and the other countries that are fantasizing that they're going to have a world where it's all solar, wind, and batteries, with, I guess, batteries that are going to have such energy density that over the summer they save up enough for the winter. How long do you think it's going to take them to realize that that truly is a fantasy and they can't have all their energy come from wind and solar?
Well, I think the reality is starting to intrude on this, this fantasy and this propaganda that's been prevalent in across Europe, but particularly in Germany. Germany has been the industrial powerhouse of Europe for decades, and now they are the sick man of Europe. And it's largely because of their failed energy policy. They closed their nuclear power plants after the cutoff, the last of them, and they closed the last of their nuclear plants after it was clear they weren't going to be able to get Russian gas because of the Ukrainian war or the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So, I mean, David, you can't fix stupid. And
Right.
the Germans have just been flat stupid. And we've seen now just in the last month or two of these Dunkelflautes where they've had, a wind droughts, prolonged wind droughts, power prices have soared. And increasingly Germany is becoming, and the rest of the grid in Europe is becoming much and more balkanized, and it's going to continue because Germany used to be a major electricity powerhouse. Now they're a major electricity importer.
Yeah, nobody wants to get caught up in that. What are your largest concerns about the grid in the U.S. over the next, say, 2 or 3 years?
Well, I think it's over reliance on natural gas and weather dependent generation. And Meredith Angwin has pointed this out before. She calls it the fatal trifecta: over reliance on weather dependent generation, solar and wind, over reliance on just in time delivery of natural gas, and over reliance on imports. So we've had a couple of close calls. We had a big issue here in Texas now 2 years ago, going on 3 years now, I guess. But remember, it was in December of 2022 over Christmas time. New York City almost ran out of natural gas. I mean,
Yeah.
it barely, they almost lost the natural gas system. Con Ed did. It would have been catastrophic. So overall, I'm pro natural gas, but I'm very concerned that the U.S. electric grid is becoming too dependent on gas. It's really all that is being built of the dispatchable capacity is all being built with natural gas fired power plants. And I'm pro gas, but we risk putting too many of our eggs in one basket, and it could end badly.
Meredith brought up a good point to my previous podcast on here, which is they use natural gas in Minnesota in the winter.
Yeah.
And so she said, it's not that you can't do natural gas. I mean, there is always a situation where it's a problem, but it's that you've got to build New York to Minnesota standards. You got to build Texas to New York standards because we've got more extreme weather now. And I don't think you have to build Texas to Minnesota standards, but they can get it that we don't get up right to the edge on even the 1 in 20 years god awful storms coming in. You still have the 1 in 100, in which case, correct me if I'm wrong, the only plants that have stored fuel is nuclear and coal, right?
That's right. Well, or oil fired.
Oil, but there isn't any oil now.
Well, there isn't, but it's efficient, and that's one of the things that makes it. What do data centers have? They have backups with diesel gensets, so they have a big honking tank full of liquid fuel. So, all of these things can play a role. Batteries don't perform well in cold weather, of course. But what we're going to have more focus, and maybe we will under the new Trump administration, more focus on understanding the critical nature of the electric grid in America and really seeing this vulnerability and declining reliability as a national security issue. And it is exactly that. It is a national security issue. But the problem, let's be clear, is that we have a very diffused ownership system of the grid in America. We have 3,000 different electricity providers. We have, 800 co-ops, 2,000 municipal-owned utilities. You've got different ownership of the transmission capacity. You've got all these different state entities, the Public Utilities Commission, the FERC, EPA, all these different competing interests and competing regulators. Nothing about this is simple.
Well, and I think most people don't understand, they understand, okay, I have water coming to my house and there's a dam up here and this can go wrong. I don't think anybody gets the fact that we've got the three grids, that you turn on a hair dryer and somewhere on that grid at that moment in time, not even a second later, there's a generator that just got a slightly bit more oomph, as I would put it. And that whole thing has to be held in essentially perfect equilibrium, almost nanosecond by nanosecond. You got to stay on that 60 hertz.
Yeah.
You got to stay on it coming into the house 120 volts. And if the amps drop too much, you start getting brownouts. And I don't think people realize how, I don't know if I want to use the word fragile, because if it was, you can't use fragile when it is kept working as much as it has and whatever, but it is definitely sensitive, for lack of a better word.
I'm not afraid to use the word fragile, because I was having a conversation earlier today, and remember the blackout of 2003, and that was started by a tree limb falling on a power line in Akron, Ohio, and then a few hours later, millions of people were without power.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of that old line about, the wings of a butterfly starting a tornado or whatever that was, right? So it is fragile, and we have to understand that fragility and what is causing that fragility. And I think it's very clear, and don't take my word for it. You can take the statements from the heads of PJM, from NERC, from MISO, all warning that we're retiring too much of our dispatchable thermal capacity and only adding weather-dependent generation. And they are very clear in their wording. Now they could be more robust, I think, or more definitive in how they're talking about it. But we are being warned about the fragility of the system. And but one of the key problems is there's just so much money behind the solar and wind crowd, and they don't want to lose these subsidies, and that's why we're building solar and wind.
Yeah. All right, let me hit the last question, and it's about big tech and the data centers, but let me preface it with my background is in the high-tech industry, including 3.5 years at one of the big tech companies. And those guys have the money to do whatever they want, and they are not going to stop for even a split second on training their models for AI and then providing that AI to everybody who wants to use it. And so how do you think big tech is going to impact the electrical grid over the next 5 years as they come in and basically say one way or another, we're powering our data centers?
Sure. Well, don't take it from me. Look at what they're doing. So Facebook, Meta, is building a massive data center. I think it's going to be $10 billion in Louisiana. And what are they doing? They're building gas-fired generation. Mm-hmm. So Entergy has already entered into this deal. This deal was announced a few weeks ago. This is very clear what's happening, that tech, for all of their posturing, Amazon and Microsoft and Google and the rest of them have for years been saying, look how much solar and wind we're buying, and solar and wind, solar and wind, solar and wind. Well, now what are they doing? Well, now they're cozying up to the nuclear sector because they realize that can give them zero carbon electricity. If they can build the SMRs, if they can refurbish 3 Mile Island, if they can, locate their data center next to that, what's the big nuclear plant in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And so they are betting longer term on nuclear, but in the short term, it's all going to be gas, and they're all going to build gas-fired generation. I don't know if you saw in Memphis, Elon Musk built a data center and didn't get any permits, but he went out and built 30 megawatts of natural gas-fired generation and just said, okay, well, sue me or, find me. I don't care, go after it. But they're very practical and if nothing else, the tech guys, and they know that they want to get these projects built. And if they want to fire them, if they want to have full-time generation, full-time electricity, they're going to do it with gas, not with, wind, solar, and batteries.
Do you think they'll keep them isolated, or do you think they'll wire them over to the grid, for fallback if ever needed?
Well, I think it'll be some of both. I mean, we've seen Microsoft in I think it's in North Dakota. They did a deal, I think, with Black Hills Power where they built a bunch of generation capacity. I think it was large recips fired with gas that can be used when the grid needs it if the data centers aren't using them. So I think we'll see some of that. You see that business model already with Enchanted Rock, a company out of Houston that's building these generation plants outside supermarkets and elsewhere where they can play into the ERCOT market if the prices are changing. So you're going to see, I think, some of both, right? There'll be some behind the meter generation that's only used by the data center, and I think there'll be some that'll be, sold into the marketplace when it benefits the company.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very, very much for your time, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you very kindly. Did I mention robertbryce.substack.com? I hope I mentioned robertbryce.substack.com.
I did. and I'll put it up in text on the video.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Always a pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.